One of the reasons I'm afraid that Kemi Badenoch needs to go is because she is helping our enemies, or the enemies of mankind. And she's doing so because she is too stupid to know what she's saying. We're living through a moment where truth is assaulted not by bombs and bullets alone, but by language, memory and myth. And the war in Ukraine is not merely a military campaign, it's a propaganda war of such intensity that even the past has become a battlefield. And it's into this fray that Kemi Badenoch has marched, waving a rhetorical white hanky, not a flag of surrender to Russia, but a hanky to reason. And Russian propaganda doesn't simply distort the present, it rewrites the past to justify the atrocities that are being committed. And the Russian state claims to be denazifying Ukraine, the same Ukraine that has a Jewish president whose family suffered in the Holocaust. They dress up aggression as resistance and call occupation liberation, and a replica of the Reichstag has been built in Moscow not to mourn the war but to glorify conquest. As Caleb Robertson so rightly observed yesterday, the Kremlin wears the uniform of the liberator while wielding the weapons of the oppressor. They tell us Russia stood alone against Nazism, but history tells us another story of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, where Stalin and Hitler divided Eastern Europe like spoils at a banquet, of Poland crushed not by one invader but by two. Propaganda, when weaponized, kills twice, first with bombs, then with lies. Now into this poisonous narrative steps Kemi Badenoch, who, in an interview over the weekend, declared that Ukraine is fighting a proxy war on behalf of Western Europe. Worse still, she claimed Israel is engaged in a proxy war on behalf of the UK in Gaza. Such phrases are not diplomatic missteps, they are gifts to Russian propaganda. Within hours, the Russian embassy in London gleefully shared her comments. The Kremlin called it a moment of truth. She has called a spade, they declared. And with that, Putin's apologists gained an English-speaking ally. Let's be frank. This sort of language is what would have cost a cabinet minister their post in a serious government. It undermines Ukraine's sovereignty. It casts Zelensky and his people not as agents of their own destiny, but as mere puppets of NATO. It hands a loaded weapon to the Kremlin's propagandists and tells them to aim wherever they like. Contrast Badenoch's indiscipline with Germany's slow but real awakening. For too long, Germany clung to the fantasy that Russia could be engaged through trade and soft power, but with the invasion of Ukraine in 2022, that illusion was shattered. And it wasn't Putin's first invasion. He tried Georgia. Chancellor Scholz's speech, the Zeitenwende speech, marked the start of a painful reassessment. Germany abandoned its dependence on Russian gas, rearmed its military and became the second largest military supporter of Ukraine. Even in the face of domestic fatigue, Berlin has recognized, albeit reluctantly, that compromise with a dictator is not peace, it's a prelude. And Badenoch's remarks ignore this European consensus. Worse, they align with the talking points of Nigel Farage, who claimed the West provoked Putin. You remember that line? Before crowds flocked to Farage's fantasy. A statement denounced by James Cleverly as parroting Russian fascism. Radek Sikorski, the Polish statesman, said it plainly: the manipulation of history to serve present power is one of the hallmarks of authoritarianism. The removal of Polish symbols from war cemeteries, the rehabilitation of Stalin as a patriot, the erasure of the Katyn massacre from Russian textbooks. All of this is not about education, it's about propaganda, it's about domination, it's about lies. To deny the complexity of history, to forget that Stalin and Hitler were allies before they were enemies, to forget that Russia invaded Poland in 1939 just as Nazi Germany did, is to allow Putin's empire of lies to flourish. In 1945, Europe said never again. But today, as Russia bombs Ukrainian hospitals and thousands of children are abducted into forced Russification, that phrase has become hollow unless we defend it, unless we defend the phrase, never again. To do so, we must guard the truth, not just with tanks and treaties, but with words, and that means calling out those in our own political parties in the UK, even at the highest levels, who echo our enemies, however inadvertently, whether they are stupid or whether they are gifted with great intelligence. And Kemi Badenoch needs to resign. She also needs to clarify her remarks, retract them, and above all learn that in an information war, careless language is not neutral, it is treasonous to truth. Kemi Badenoch, if she had been in a cabinet, would be encouraged to resign. She's the leader of the opposition. It amounts to much the same sort of thing. This is one step too far. She needs to recognise that her best route is resignation. Her best route is silence. She's done too much damage. She has done with this statement almost as much damage as Liz Truss did with her Rostov-on-Don nonsense in front of Sergei Lavrov. How anybody in their right mind could think that voting for Liz Truss to be Prime Minister after that Rostov-on-Don gaffe. I don't know. I don't understand how people in the Conservative Party could have taken that election seriously. And I don't understand how people in the Conservative Party could not see through Kemi Badenoch. I find it extraordinary that these two individuals should have taken the top role in the Conservative Party. There is no purpose to it. I can see very clearly why people might be angry with Boris. I can see very clearly that people may feel that Rishi Sunak didn't do the job that he was capable of doing. And I can see very clearly why David Cameron let the side down by resigning once the referendum result came in. What I can't see is how either Liz Truss or Kemi Badenoch made it to that top role. And for the record, while I don't like Theresa May, I can very easily understand how she made it to number 10. I can very easily see how she showed enormous promise and enormous potential, despite the plethora of disasters that she oversaw, not least Windrush, while she was in charge of the Home Office. But to her credit, and to excuse it, the Home Office is a poisoned chalice, and she remained there for far longer than I think almost anybody else has been in that ministry of late. And for that, I suppose, she deserves some credit simply for perseverance. And again, not unlike Rishi Sunak, once she resigned, once she left the job, once she stopped being Prime Minister, she did sparkle with something that suggests being Prime Minister smothers both the intellect and that potential. Maybe in the modern age, Prime Ministers are so lawyered up that they can no longer be themselves, and that's a great shame. Boris, in being himself, in defying the lawyers, I suspect, strode so far off piste that a linguistic and a practical avalanche was inevitable in some form, and Boris paid the price by being forced to resign. But Kemi Badenoch needs to consider her position immediately.